Let's start then. So welcome everyone to the first in our new series of Ordinary Extraordinary Women. This is a special FWN series aimed at shining a spotlight on some of the amazing women in our movement who don't always get the recognition they deserve. So there'll be more of these events coming up. So if you've got any suggestions for anyone who will make a great guest, please get in touch with Mariana or myself. So when I was thinking about unsung heroes of the Labour Party movement, who were the obvious choices for our first session? Of course, our very own Caroline and Christine, and we're delighted to have so many members of FWN here tonight to join us. So welcome. If I can ask people, if you've got any questions, put them in the chat and I'll either ask them or we'll come to you at the end, depending on what the question is. That'll be lovely. But this is a casual evening, this is an in-conversation event, and we'll keep things flowing, and we'll make sure we're finished by 8 o'clock. So I'm going to be trying to be very disciplined with the time. So welcome everyone, but big special welcome to Christine and Caroline, who have changed the lives of so many of us on this call tonight. So the first question I'm going to ask is, how did you end up in the Labour movement? So Christine, if I start with you, and then we'll go to Caroline straight afterwards.
Yes, thank you very much, and lovely to see so many of you here tonight. You know, I'm always envious when people say, oh, during our childhood, we sat round the table and discussed politics. Because in my house, I remember about the age of 11, my father was incredibly right-wing, right off the spectrum, almost fascist. And my brother, who was at boarding school but came home, was extremely left-wing. So mealtimes started with a raging argument and usually ended in a big fight and the doors slamming. So at about 11 or 12, I thought politics is not for me. However, two major things changed my mind. And the first was a lovely friend of my brother's, who was the political editor for the Daily Mirror, invited me to London, because I was up in Manchester then, whilst he was writing his articles. And he'd take me on a few occasions and he'd say, do you want the Lords or the Commons? And then after sitting watching debates, we went for tea on the terrace and he decoded for me what was happening. And I began to get really fascinated. But the second major thing that happened was that my boyfriend, age 16, who actually became my husband a little bit later, invited me to Harold Wilson's rally at Bellevue in Manchester. And that was it. I was completely absorbed into the Labour Party. But, you know, obviously I went off to university, I started having children, and during all of that period, I was active behind the scenes. I was in a college further education, and as I got into senior leadership, it was restricted politically. So it wasn't really till I began my third career, or in terms of consultancy and working in government, that I started to be much more politically active. And maybe we'll come back to some of those details a little bit later.
Fantastic. And then Caroline, if we can go over to you.
Caroline's on mute.
Thanks very much indeed. Yes, I think I started a year before you, Christine. I was 10 when my journey started. And that was when my mum stood in council in Portland, in Dorset. And I actually found this. Can you see it? Vote Labour, Libby Adams. That's my mum. And I was 10. And she took me and my twin sister campaigning and knocking on the doors. And I think we were getting the sympathy votes. And she scraped in, and I think due to obviously me and my sister. But, you know, after that and subsequent general elections, our house was the committee rooms. And I remember running from polling station to polling station, collecting the numbers and running back to the house and crossing them off, and the Labour promises list. And I found it really exciting. I was only about 10 or 14, whatever it was. And I really got the political bug very early in life. And then at 15, I was in Dorset. My sister and I formed Dorset Young Socialists in Dorset. It's obviously, you know, a hotbed of socialism down there. And, you know, we attend full Labour Party meetings. I'm not quite sure we were even old enough. So that's what we spent our youth doing, going to Labour Party meetings. I know. I think around about then, I started to think about what I wanted to do, and I thought, yes, I wanted to work in the House of Commons, and I loved history, and I found out that my great grandfather Joseph Hume was an MP from 1812 to 1855. And I was really fascinated to read about him and his time in Parliament. And I thought, yes, I want to work there. My mum said that she didn't think she said I would never work in Parliament. And I thought, and I must admit, I wasn't quite sure how I'd get here, or how to go about it. And after that, after I left college, I saw a tiny advert in The Guardian for a job with Terry Davis MP, which I applied for and managed to get an interview. I travelled all the way from Dorset to London for that interview, but I didn't get that job. And in fact, that was just the story really of my life for a decade after that. And application after application, interview after interview. And a number of MPs, I'm just thinking back, who I had interviews with, Paul Flynn, Robin Cook, Tom Pendry, even Mo Molan, and I even had a job interview in the Speaker's office. But anyway, the same response was I didn't have any experience of working in Parliament, which is actually obviously true. And then 1992, after Labour's general election loss, I felt so miserable. I thought I had to do something. So I sent my CV to the office where I'm working now. And the office I'm in now, although it's somewhere different at the time. And I sent my CV to that office. And in fact, now, I've got this CV folder here, and people send in CVs to this office. I put them in here. Well, I sent my CV to this office back in 1992. And from that point, I had a few more interviews, which I didn't get. But one interview I did get was an interview in February 1994 for a job in Tony Blair's office when he was Shadow Home Secretary. His right-hand woman, Angie Hunter, had seen my CV in this folder, not this particular folder, another folder, and she pulled it out and got in touch. To this day, I do not know why she pulled my CV out, because I don't think it was very good at all. But anyway, I got a job interview, same old story though, I didn't have enough experience. And it's at this point I thought, it's actually impossible for me to work in Parliament. And I thought, how do I do it? And I could easily have given up at that point. Then circumstances happened, and John Smith, leader of the Labour Party, died in May 1994, and Tony Blair became leader in that July. By then, I was working for a building company in West Hampstead. I was having a terrible time, wanted to leave, handed my notice in the new year. So there I was, December, cold evening, wet, cold evening. I remember it so distinctly, while I was watching EastEnders. And someone called Sue Jackson phoned me from Tony Blair's office. And I said, hello. And she said, are you still looking for a job? And I said, yes. And talk about one door closing, another door opening. I had an interview, and all the numerous rejections I had up to that point, I somehow knew that I was going to get this job with Tony Blair. It was a junior role and a big pay cut, but I was absolutely ecstatic to get that job. So, not giving up. And so it came to pass. But I started working with Tony Blair, and the leader of the opposition office, on Monday, 4th of January, 1995. The rest is history. I'm still working for the Labour Party 28 years later. And in 1997, I started working in number 10 Downing Street, following Labour's landslide victory, where I briefly met one Christine Megson, even though I didn't know I had at the time.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
that's where our paths crossed, 1999, actually, wasn't it?
yeah, I was principal of a college, and yeah, as I say, I could not be overtly Labour, but my joy knew no bounds when I got this invitation to number 10 Downing Street to a Millennium Education lecture. And I had decided, even though I was terrified, that I had to ask a question. I had to, partly to make sure that further education got mentioned, because it doesn't usually, and just because I was going to set myself a challenge. And it's a long story, but I won't tell the long story. But years later, obviously, I had kept this invitation in my memorabilia box, and I opened it years later, and I looked, and it said RSVP Caroline Adams. Amazing. But I had one other story when after I'd been a principal, I went to work in central government, worked in the Department for Education, and then I went to work for the Cabinet Office, in fact, on a project reporting to Tony Blair, number 10. And I was working really in an area of deprivation up in the northeast on a project with young people, and we decided to bring them down to Downing Street for a tour. And guess who took us on the tour? So there you are. Our paths were absolutely meant to cross. And that kind of brings us up to where we formally met, Kelly.
Yes, so my next question was going to be, how did you meet? But just before I get onto that, just 2 points I wanted to bring that I think other people will want me to highlight. Christine, you just said when you asked this question, you were terrified. It almost took my breath away to hear you say that. I have never in my wildest dreams been able to imagine you being terrified. And
well, my heart was beating so loudly. I had to visit every toilet between Paddington and Downing Street, because I had set myself a challenge of asking a question, but without knowing how I was going to weave it in. Somebody had actually taught me how to do it. You know, when questions are going on and there's a discussion, nothing to do with what you want to say. And I learned the technique. But, you know, I'd also been told, don't ask the first question, which I think's rubbish now, but then, and so when the second question, or when time for the second question went, everybody put their hands up. And I thought, oh no, I failed my own challenge. Nobody else knew this. And so I watched very, very carefully for the third, you know, that second question was just finishing. And as it was finishing, I was standing up like this. And of course, they had to ask me. So I had no idea what the discussion was. I had to sort of weave in my question. And to this day, I have no idea what the answer was that they gave. I was absolutely ecstatic with myself, and I'd learned how to do it. But yeah, I got over the nerves then.
Fantastic. And the other thing I think that people will resonate with, which is something Caroline said, is that she kept going and kept applying for job after job after job. I had no idea about that before we had this discussion, and I think that's so inspiring, that resilience. I think we might replace the definition of resilience with a picture of Caroline in the dictionary. So you're right, that does bring me to the next question, which is, how did you formally come to meet?
Well, in 2000, so I've been working in London on a range of different projects, different departments, different, you know, I did some other work for number 10, etc. But in my voluntary time, I had started to be a mentor. there was a lovely program called Leaders Together, where they brought people with leadership experience and paired us up with leaders of refugee organisations and charities. So I was paired up with a leader of a Latin American charity, and I was getting so much out of it. I'd never had a mentor, and I hadn't realised how powerful it could be. And not long before, Seema Malhotra had launched the Fabian Women's Network. And we used to have these huge, great big gatherings, which we'll get back again. And I was just walking into one, and there was this young girl, and I was chatting to her, asked her what she was doing. She was finishing university doing politics and French. So I said, okay, so what are you going to do next? And she said, I have no idea. I don't want to go and be an MP, but I don't know what's open to me. So I said, no problem, because as we walked into this room, I saw somebody who I knew was writing the Women's Manifesto for the 2009 election. Yeah. And so I introduced her and I said, can you just talk to Felicity and say, what is open to you? And when you finished with her, can you introduce her to somebody else? And I said to this young girl, go around the room, and when you finish, come back to me at the end. And she came back and she said, I just had no idea how many roles were open to you in the world of politics. And I suddenly had this light bulb moment of putting together the mentoring bit, that huge social capital, intellectual capital that exists in the Fabian Women's Network, and mentoring and etc. And the idea that quite often in life we get to crossroads, different stages of life, and we don't really know what is open to us. So I went to Seema and said, hey, how about a mentoring program with, mentors and politics and Fabians? And she said, great. So we did some research. We launched the first program, kind of pilot, in 2010. And then at the end of that first year, we realized that actually we'd got something interesting here. And Seema said, you need some help. And gosh, was she right. So in walks Caroline. And I realized absolutely she was the missing link, because even though I know a lot about public life, and my knowledge of politics and how government works was good by then, how Parliament worked, not a clue, let alone find your way around Parliament. And here was somebody who absolutely complemented my skills. I'm a trainer, educationalist, and there you are. And the rest is history. We just could not be where we are today if I hadn't met Caroline.
Caroline,
Are you going to say anything?
Absolutely. And if with all the networks, all the people that I know, I mean, when I think about me getting into this place, it's impossible. I didn't know anyone. Absolutely knew no one at all. And if I'd had the Fabian Women's Network back then, it would have been much easier. But so because of my experience, I am so very, very keen to, if anything I can do to provide or facilitate those networks and to help people along the way, then I will, because I just know how difficult it is to get here. And there's still we need so many more women. So in terms of MPs, and I know Labour's got 50-50, but that could go backwards at the next general election, who knows? And then in terms of political advisors and staff, wherever you look, we still need more women. The work is never done. And so I'm, in terms of what we've achieved and what's, the whole, and it's the last 10 years in opposition. It hasn't been great in opposition, but the one thing I think we have achieved is getting more women into politics and public life. And I want to see more women into politics, become MPs, and I want to see more of the mentees become members of Parliament. So we'll keep keep working hard, and if there's anything I can do, whatever, whatever small way, then I will.
So I could probably go around the call and ask people what they've got out of the mentoring program, and then we would be here till 10 or 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. So I won't do that. But I think for us women here, I think we'd be really interested to know what the two of you have got out of the program, and if there's any particular memories that really stick out for you of the different programs, or how it's changed over the years.
Anyway, I'm going to say, obviously, you were cohort 9, so that's one of the highlights.
Yeah. Well said.
I think it's always very exciting, isn't it, Christine, when we select, and it's a rigorous process, and you'd never quite know, who you've selected really. We don't meet them, there's no interview, it's based on application, a CV, and it's so that first meeting, that first induction, that moment, I find very exciting. When you walk in, you see all these women that you've selected, you think, oh God, have we got it right? You never. But anyway, yes, we generally do get it right, and and it's a joy that first contact, isn't it, Christine?
Oh, absolutely. Even before that, when we get the bios and we get the pictures of people, because we're selecting on an application form. People say, why don't you interview? Well, for a start, this is voluntary. And if you get 100 people applying, then, we couldn't interview. But that would rely on a job description. And the one thing we don't want is everybody being the same. So, we're not looking for 28 people who are the same. And then we get people who are good at interviews, and other people who might be less good at interviews because they're lacking in confidence. So the first time we meet, I love. And I also just love meeting people at the end of the program or later on. Sometimes we get people at the beginning who are lacking in confidence. Maybe they're looking down a bit, or in their photo, they're hiding behind somebody or something else. And then by the end of the program, or on other occasions when we meet them doing something, and just watching people speak with confidence, and you think, I've been instrumental in that journey. I've played a little part in that journey. That's hugely rewarding. But I also think what I enjoy is the interaction. I found a little diagram I'd done after cohort 1 when Kate Green said to me, well, that's it, you've got to do cohort 2. And I sort of hadn't thought that through fully, and started to doodle and what it might look like with cohort 1 working with cohort 2 and so on. And I was just so amazed to see how that actually did happen. And it hasn't just been about women in politics getting together. It's about the growth into public life. And just watching 80 women being elected as councillors, number of people opening their own charities or running their own charities, or being promoted, or realising their dream. All of those things give me a huge amount of pleasure.
Fantastic. Caroline, did you want to add anything else to that?
No, I agree. I mean, there have been other, obviously, going to Brussels. I mean, sorely missed going to Brussels. And apologies to post-Brexit cohorts. They were. I just loved going to Brussels, and Christine and I got many stories to tell, including, I don't know whether to mention the.
I think we had some unfortunate events as well as some very positive experiences. I think if Tamara is still with us, she will remember. We were there at the time of the bombings in Brussels, and that was the most tough day. Well, one of the most tough days in my life, and in both of our lives. That was very difficult. We have been to Wales. We are going to Scotland. I think the other thing to mention, Caroline, is the most positive thing that came out of the pandemic was that we were able to switch to being online. You know, look at us now, if we'd all had to go to London.
Absolutely.
And that opportunity, that the challenge of converting a program that had been face to face to online and how it might work, and actually finding it so much more inclusive that you can have a quick hour at lunchtime helping somebody. I can see somebody on the screen who was applying to be a counsellor. We gave her an hour. She's smiling hard now because, and I'm not saying that that hour got her selected, but it helped. And having that shift to being able to have mentees organise an hour here, an hour there, I think has been very, very rewarding, not just for us, but for everyone.
Fantastic. So I think we'll move on to some questions from the floor shortly. And Tasha's got her hand up, so I'll go to her first. But first of all, I just want to ask both of you, what are some of your other big political memories or memories throughout your career that you could share with the ladies on the call tonight? Caroline, do you want to start on that one?
Oh,
Got the props.
I've got loads. I spent 9 years working for Tony Blair. 7 of those years were number 10 Downing Street. I mean, I could tell you stories about Bill Clinton, George Bush, Nelson Mandela. I remember just bumping into the Dalai Lama, who just happened to be sitting just in the corridor. I thought it, had extraordinary moments. And I remember in the cabinet room, there's a cabinet meeting, and they're all in there, and I had to go in with a cup of tea for Tony Blair. And honestly, I think I was shaking because it was so quiet. And I got to Tony Blair's seat with his cup of tea, I think half of it was in the saucer. But I can't tell you the people I met. I started doing tours in number 10 Downing Street for 7 years. So I took, as Christine said, I took her on a tour. But so many people from all over the country and famous people as well. And I took Noel Gallagher, Oasis, on a tour, Cliff Richard. I mean, it's just so many things. I mean, I can't tell you. There were so many things that I could probably write a book.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, it was so exciting. It was so exciting, and hopefully, we're going to get back there soon. And I certainly want to see if I can do some more tours of Downing Street. That's my plan. But obviously, then I started working in this office in 2004. But then in 2010, we were in opposition, and these last 11 years haven't obviously not as good as in being government. But one of the most memorable thing I did during that time, 2015. Remember the pink bus? I can just pink bus. I drove the pink bus 12 weeks around the country with Harriet Harman, backseat driving. No, she wasn't. But it was the most terrifying thing I've ever done in my life. But amazing at the same time. That's another book I can write about the pink bus. So many stories about the people we met, going around the country, meeting women, all walks of life, and taking politicians to these women and talking about women's lives. And it was just, it was an extraordinary time in my life, and it's something I will never forget. But also, I mean, bus related. 2017, I was on Jeremy Corbyn's battle bus, and 2019, I was on Jeremy Corbyn's battle bus. So I quite like coaches, actually. That's been the highlight of my years in opposition, these going around the country in a coach. So I'm sure there's loads of other things, but Christine, how about you?
Yeah, well, I absolutely can't claim any of those things. And for me, the achievements, the success have been very different. Clearly, I'm very proud of having children and grandchildren and being able to be a role model for them, because I think that's really, really important. One of the things I've particularly enjoyed, having been close to the centre and doing a project for Number 10 particularly, was that I learnt how to influence politics. But I also managed, through a particular project I was working on, to get some lines in the manifesto, in the Labour manifesto, and to be able to take politicians out. I did a lot of, when I was working in the Cabinet Office, I was able to take out ministers to the front line, to very much the front line, and to demonstrate some of the things that were happening. And to really, I'm sorry to say to those civil servants here, occasionally to buck the trend and take ministers out to see things that they wouldn't normally see, and then change policy because of it.
That's brilliant. Right, we're going to go over to our first question because Natasha has had her hand up for a little while and she will probably tell me off. So Natasha, over to you, and then we'll go to Mariana afterwards.
No, I would never tell you off, not at all. I've really enjoyed listening to you both. I genuinely think you should both write a book together, perhaps, on all of this. I just wanted to know, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given that you'd like to share with the group? Maybe Caroline, for example, had a bit of advice shared by all those wonderful people that she met at Downing Street. But yeah, that's my first question. Thanks.
Ooh. Best piece of advice. I had lots of advice which I ignored. I've been slow to take advantage of it, but being told to listen as much as you talk, that really went home to me, because my natural inclination is to talk first and then listen. So getting the balance right. The other piece of advice was get status and achievement in balance. It's so many people want to push their status forward, and I have to say it is a gendered issue particularly, and actually getting status pushed forward and ignoring the achievements is the wrong way around. Getting that in balance has been very, very important to me. There was a time when I thought having a space in a car park with my name on was really, really, I'd made it. The reality was, no, much more important not to have a space with your name on and to actually achieve something.
That.
I gave 2, Caroline. It's yours to do 2 now.
Natasha, I don't think I've been given any advice. Not really, I haven't. I mean, I spent, obviously the first decades of just trying to find my own way through and getting here and trying muddling my way through, frankly. And I didn't have anyone. And it's only, I mean, Christine has been a massive source of support. And I mean, I've learned so much from Christine. Well, I have. These last 10 years is I think is where I've learned a lot and doing this program. But you, Christine, yeah, you definitely. I mean, before you, I don't honestly think, I don't think I'd really had any advice or, someone to ask advice. And yeah, I think that's been, because I know that you're always there, and I know if I need help, whatever it is, I know there's someone to turn to, and that's massively important to have that support and that someone to guide you, even though in small moments, it could be, it couldn't be, whatever it is, it's just having that somebody there. Yeah.
Thanks.
Oh, I think we're all quite moved by that. We're getting a lot of demand for the book in the chat, and we start taking orders for it very soon at a conference, we might make a bit of money. So I need to start on that book very quickly. Mariana, should we go over to you?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Kelly, and obviously thank you, Christine and Caroline. I just wanted to, more than ask a question, just put it again on record, just to say how transformational this program is, and how actually it's an ongoing source of amazement to me that when we try and champion meaningful diversity, I think that the greatest testimony to that is FWN, and how you actually sit down and work out who's going to form your cohort. It's not just a sort of a crass kind of, oh, I'll have someone old and I'll have someone new, and somehow it works. And you have empowered so many women from, you know, in my situation, a woman in her 50s who's moving from one career to another. I've met, you know, obviously council leaders who hadn't even become councillors in my cohort. So it just has to go on record how transformational this program has been, in both you and Christine and Caroline equally so. And I love the backstory of how you got together, but thank you so much for all you do. So as current chair, I'd love to just put that on record.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Emily, should we go over to you?
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to ask a bit about, I mean, you both achieved so much and do so much, and I was thinking about how you said this is the mentorship program is voluntary, and I wondered if you managed to maintain a work-life balance, and if you do, what are your top tips for trying to maintain it? It's something I certainly struggle with, especially with the remote working. I think I like, you know, being on the laptop at home, I struggle to set that boundary, and you know, it's how much of your free time do you give up? Is it all of it? Do you struggle with it?
Yeah, I don't have a work-life balance, Emily. No, I mean, look at me, I'm still at work. No, I mean, and it's recess. I shouldn't be here at all. I've been here all week. I prefer to be in here than be in my flat, which I could have easily been this week. Kelly, you have been in Parliament this week, have you?
Not this week.
No, because now it's recess until 4th of September. But yeah, I certainly try and have a Monday to Friday work life, but the weekend, I think that's, for me, it's sacrosanct. So I walk 20 miles on a Saturday, for example. I go walking, and you know, I try and do some exercise, and yes, which I think is very important to me. But I feel privileged being here. I love what I do. I love being in Parliament. I'd rather be here than home, and that's, I don't know what I told you about me. I don't know, but 28 years I've been doing this, and I still find it a privilege. I love coming in every day, and yeah, so I'm not the best person really to talk about work-life balance. Christine, you might not be either.
No, I don't think. I think one of the things I would say, if you want advice, is where do you get your energy from? And I get my energy from being with people. You know, I do still work a bit, which is madness because all my contemporaries have retired, but I still love doing that. And I find meeting people, networking, being surrounded particularly by, well, it's not difficult to be surrounded by women younger than myself, but being surrounded by lots of vibrant women, asking lots of lovely questions, interacting, gives me a lot of energy to spread out amongst the other things. I've got a large family, I've got childcare responsibilities, and I chair a charity. So it's a very busy life, but I've never found anything out of balance. But as I say, find your point of energy and make sure you've got lots of that. And then when you've got that, that allows you to do other things. Does that, sorry, Emily, you've gone off my screen and I don't want to start moving it around.
Yeah, of course, that's lovely. Thank you. Thanks both.
Yeah, you see, your success, Emily, you know, the fact that you've got a great mentor and you get on with her, and I read that and I think, whoopee, okay, bring on the washing up.
Big. Right, should we go to Rosa now?
Hi everybody, it's really great to be here. I just wanted to share that I'm with Emily on the cohort currently, and just wanted to say a huge thank you to both Christine and Caroline. I just think their passion is so palpable, and just listening to them is amazing, and I'm getting so much out of it. But just to share that I met with my mentor who I'd been assigned to last week, and I ended up spending 5 hours with them because it was just so amazing. And in the end I just said to them, just tell me when to leave because I'm just so happy to, you know, to be here today. So long story short, I ended up being 5 hours with them and just had, you know, the best experience. And, you know, I did think about how it just wouldn't have happened had I not have been, you know, in this cohort. So a huge thank you to Christine and Caroline for making that happen. So it's just wanted to share that experience. Thank you. And it already has been so transformational for me. And this is obviously very early days, but thank you. Also, I'm so sorry, I forgot to ask my question. And the other thing I was just going to mention was, obviously lots of people will have seen the humongous list that came out yesterday in terms of parliamentary seats, and I'm just for those of us that are trying to navigate our way through procedures and things, I feel it would be quite beneficial if so basically for those that haven't seen it, there's a humongous list that has come out with lots of seats, and there's going to be a different process to the traditional process for you know, trying to stand in a particular area. These are the ones that are deemed perhaps not so winnable seats, and the deadline is September. So I was just thinking it may be beneficial if we were able to have a session maybe in the August at some point, just to go through, you know, those kind of procedures. If anybody's interested, I know I certainly would love to have that opportunity to just talk things through, because it's a slightly different process to the other one going on. So it was just an idea and just to try and get the feels for it. Thank you.
Caroline's writing something down, I think. So good.
Well, yes, no, I mean, that's a good idea. That's sure you might be interested as well. But yes, should we look at doing something? Well, when's the deadline?
I think Rosa said it was September.
Yeah, yes, I think that's a good idea. We can do something, definitely. Yep. I've made it out, Rosa.
Brilliant.
Just he's going to be interested.
Yeah, there's a few people in the chat, I think, saying they're interested as well. So yeah, we'll get that. Mariana's nodding. So yeah, we'll get that underway. Natasha, do you want to come back in now?
Yeah, I feel awful because I didn't say anything about Christine and Caroline when I started off, but they know, but they do know how much you know, both of you, how much you mean to me and how much you mean to the cohort that I was in. And what's lovely is that we are regularly in touch, you know, a few times a week, and we know we can draw on each other for support whenever we need it, which is just amazing. And also draw on each other when we want to celebrate our successes and things that we're doing well. But we know that we can always come to you, Caroline, Christine. So just thank you for being always there when we need you. I wanted to ask, who are the women that inspire you and keep you grounded and keep you going? Thanks.
Well, I studied French at university, and the historical woman who I really loved and always wanted to be was a woman called Madame de Sévigné. And she was 18th century, and she used to have these evenings when she gathered round young people to discuss the questions of the day, the philosophical questions of the day. And I always thought, oh, I would love to have been in that era and had the young people and the bright young things of the day sitting round me discussing things. And then lo and behold, I'm sitting here in 2023 and I'm surrounded by loads and loads, hundreds and hundreds of women discussing the issues of the day. And so I know that's not a current woman, Natasha, but I just suddenly realized one day, my God, I realized my dream here. That's exactly it, you know, a network of women. Because, you know, you're really nice and thanking us. But the reality is that some of the discussions that we have really, really help me. I haven't got the specialist health knowledge or the specialist economic or the specialist lens and prism to start looking at intersectionality. But we've got so many women who are doing it for us that in the course of the day or the month or the year or whatever, I'm being educated by all of these voices. So my answer is that I find you lot inspiring. I really do. And I learned so much from the discussions because you're all bringing a completely different viewpoint. You know, I probably am middle class. I'm certainly a more nouveau poor than my parents and grandparents were. You know, a white woman. And yes, I'm educated. But, you know, I therefore have got a lens that is fairly narrow, and you lot have broadened it. You know, Mariana talking to a group about, you know, what it was like at home, you know, different people talking about their experiences. Shamsha, who's not here on the call, I don't think, spoke to a group the other day explaining how she had one group at home and one group at school. And as she went back at home and had to change culture into the Asian culture at home and the Asian language and the conflict she had on a daily basis, she really, really helped me. She gave me an insight. So yeah, I could say I love Jacinda Ardern. I love various politicians, but I mean, there's some, you know, who so many of you have taught me a lot. So I got 299 role models. Thanks, Natasha.
Fantastic. So I've got you next, but we'll just go over to Caroline. See if you wanted to add anything to Christine's answer on Natasha's question.
Well, I mean, I agree with Christine totally. I mean, I always think if I'd applied for the programme, I would never got in. But I think you know, because everyone is so incredible, you know, and I was fascinated to read people's lives, and it's not just, I mean, all the mentees' lives, but also whenever I read about women's lives generally and for people and achievements in different fields, I just get inspired by people by reading about women in history as well, and it's like, and obviously Christine. I mean, Christine is it's just, honestly, Christine, you've been a huge source of inspiration to me, as I mentioned before. But yes, I find reading about women's lives, I think that's, and how, you know, that journey, about the journey, and how people, how, you know, the hardships and the struggles and everything, and people get to where they got to with, they've had 8 children and they've had 3 jobs, and you know, I don't know how some people live their lives. It's just extraordinary, some people's lives, and I think just everyday lives. People, I think just being a woman, I think actually being a woman is an achievement, because you know, I think it's hard being a woman, and so I think we all can, you know, so. You know, we can all be, yeah. So that's, yeah, but I agree with Christine, absolutely.
Fantastic. Simon, can I go over to you now, please?
Thank you, Kelly. First of all, a big thank you to organising such a wonderful discussion, because it's almost end of week, and when you hear such inspiration talking, it re-energizes you. So for me, I came into politics with knowing no one, literally, and Christine and Caroline sort of like handheld a lot of the time, encouraging me, telling that take the leap of faith and go into politics and do more. And look, now I'm the chair of my Labour group. So I think one of the things that matters is having that confidence that you've given. My question around the journey, because you and FWN are like inseparable. It's just, we cannot think one without the other. My question is around the future of FWN and yours for you as well. So when you look forward or you do a bit of horizon scanning, what do you see for yourselves and FWN? Like, what will be your dreams and aspirations, say 5, 10 years or 20 years from now? So I would like to know about that as well.
Great question.
Well, I can say that we've already started, because good leadership also requires good succession planning. And so this year we worked very hard and managed to get a small grant, which has enabled us to employ Georgie Nell just 1 day a week. And that's already started to free up some of our time to start looking at the whole 300. So very often we get requests. We had one the other day, do you have any women with any knowledge of foreign policy? Do we have any women with any knowledge? It took me 2 minutes to immediately think of a dozen, and then 3 minutes I had 20 women. But that's in my head and Caroline's head. And so, we're starting to think through how to make a database that's really, really runs, how to actually harness all of that social capital that we've got, and to really think through, this is a powerful network, not just the mentees, but the Fabian Women's Network is a powerful network. And how do we really harness all of that? So, how can we make sure it continues? So Georgie is, with our help, writing a little manual so that anybody could pick it up and could do it, looking at how we actually get a decent database of existing and future mentees. And then we need to raise some more money to ensure that we've got somebody paid just 1 day a week for forever, or for as long as possible. Caroline? Because I think 20 years is, I might be onto the terrace, being helped onto the terrace in 20 years' time.
Nothing wrong with that.
And me.
Absolutely. No.
Well, I agree. I think we just got to keep going. We need more women coming forward. Maybe, some concern about women aren't coming forward in terms of getting selected, and we've got to keep going, basically, and succession planning and what we're doing, and just ensuring that this program can carry on, and that we can do what we do to ensure that more women put themselves forward, and we give them the encouragement, the support, and everything to be able to do that. So that's so important. Like, I don't want to see it. Like, well, I feel we can't let that happen. That women, that what we've achieved, we would go backwards in terms of getting women into this place. So we just got to keep going.
Right, last question, I think now. Maddie, over to you.
Hiya. It is always the best to just sit and listen to you guys talk. It's like my favourite thing in the world. So thank you for this evening. It's just joyous. My question is this. We spent an hour talking about all of these amazing things and celebrating you guys and celebrating all the amazing people in this room. What would you like us to go away and do now? There's one thing you wanted us to go away and do, inspired by you guys, as well as buying the book. What would that one thing be?
It is a great question. Stay in touch. Keep in touch. I think I love it seeing, you know, people from different years. And so stay in touch is one. All right. The second is help us answer the last question, because we're actually in the process of getting a little survey together, because it's all very well us saying what we would like out of the programme in 20 years' time. Much more important to be customer centric and to actually engage those people who've been involved in the programme in giving us the answer. So help us devise the question in terms of understanding and help everybody fill in the answer.
Yeah, and keep striving. You know, what is it you want to do, to achieve? There'll be obstacles, there'll be things in the way that and it's going to be difficult, and there will be difficulties, but keep going if that's what you want. So yeah,
yeah, and send us good news. I love waking up in the morning and seeing these little messages. And Christine, I just wanted to let you know that I've been successful on, and it may be somebody I haven't spoken to for 3 years. And I think, look, you know, I'm a morning person, so I leap out of bed and think, yeah, she did it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. We're just getting some thank yous in the chat, so I'll let them run for a few seconds, but I'll bring this to a close now. Tonight is everything I hoped it would be. I knew it would be absolutely fantastic and that we would all learn lots from having an hour of Christine and Caroline's undivided attention. So thank you everyone for coming. Thank you to everyone that asked questions. And if there's any women you'd like to suggest for our series, please do get in touch. Sure, I feel like everyone would like to end giving Caroline and Christine a proper clap, so let's do that.
Thank you, Kelly, as well, for
absolutely. We couldn't have done it without your idea, Kelly. So thank you to you.
You're very welcome. Brilliant. Well, everyone have a great evening, and we'll see everyone soon. Take care.
Lovely. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.